From the start of the resurrection matrix, we see that something is different. The Warner Brothers logo is now in full color, a taste of the matrix to come. A single line of code falls, reminding us that the resurrection matrix has to be decoded, line by line, image by image. We are then taken to the matrix title, and we journey through the M and are introduced to the matrix resurrections code. The resurrections matrix code rises, unlike any of the trilogy code we have seen before, and we notice the old matrix code falling to meet the new rising resurrections code. We arrive at modal 101, triggering within us memories of room 101, Neo's room. At this point, the first question arises: what is a modal? We are now introduced to our first two characters, Seek and a captain. These are voices that we do not recognize from previous versions of the Matrix.
Memories from my life. None of them have it.
We are triggered to remember the trace program of the first Matrix. The voiceover brings to mind another question: how can a skylight be a window pane? Something is very different with this resurrection matrix. The trace program is interfering with the modal hack. The captain confirms that it is a modal, and again we are left thinking, what is a modal? Apart from the modals one used to code within a HTML page, this is the first time most of us hear the word modal. Now we are informed that the modal is built from what looks like old matrix code. This statement informs us that the new code that is used to build the matrix resurrection is different from an old code. The captain states that the old code looks very familiar. And looking at the screen, it is familiar to us. We have seen this code in the first Matrix. Seek asks the captain to drop a pin, which is modern day slang for send me your location. This lets us know that the people talking are from a new matrix, a matrix that is designed after the Revolution matrix. Phishing is jargon used by hackers, loosely translated as gathering information. Seek mentions the general, which triggers the memory of the general from the Matrix Online. We sit back in our seats, waiting for this new Matrix journey to begin. The name of the captain is given to us. Her name is Bugs. And then, like the first Matrix, we see the number 506 on the screen. and we journey through the zero, a journey that lasts a bit longer than the first journey we took in the first matrix. We are expecting to see that bang of light, that flash, and the symbolic image of the birth of consciousness. The word freeze pings our minds and brings up images of Morpheus and the red dress training program. The image on the screen looks like an image from the first matrix. If we look at this from the perspective of the code, we can see that this code is very much like the old matrix code. However, the words used are different, and the door to this room does not show it as room 303. Now we see an image of what looks like Trinity, but for those of us who have seen the matrix hundreds of times, we know that looks can be deceiving. Then we are taken to an external view. We're at the location of the heart of the city. The heart of the city sign looks different from the old matrix.
Have these memories from your life. None of them have it. Have these memories from your life. None of them have it.
This is the moment for you to show us what is real.
I know many people do not think about the matrix as deep as we do. That is why so many make the claim that the resurrections is bad and yet have no idea on how to back up their claim. Some say it is bad because it is meta, as if a movie that is meta means the movie is bad. In this second episode, which continues our Resurrections Matrix journey, I want to offer one of several mind-blowing theories I have on the Resurrections Matrix. A code in the Resurrections Matrix points us to the idea of a modal, a simulation used to evolve programs. In the Resurrection, the modal we see is based on the start of the first matrix. This piece of information leads my mind to think that the Matrix movie was a modal to evolve our minds to accept the world as a digital simulation. I understand that this theory will be wildly controversial, but it stands to reason that if the Matrix movie as a modal argument is true, then we are indeed living in a simulation. If our world is a simulation, and in that simulation the Matrix movie exists, then it stands to reason that the movie is a modal. Think of all the minds in the Matrix. those minds do not exist outside of the matrix. The only way to think of the minds as they operate in the matrix simulation is that, like the matrix, those minds are digital by the very nature of being plugged into the computer-generated dream world. The mind connected to a body in the pod is not aware of things that are external to the dream world. Thus all things within the matrix are digital in nature, and the matrix movie or the matrix mind game too are digital artifacts that exist within the matrix. And once a digital mind in the matrix processes these artifacts, it is only logical that the mind must evolve to believe one of two things: that the movie is a work of science fiction or a work of science fact. What makes the resurrection awesome is that it informs us that perhaps things are not as binary as the conclusions that we made after plugging our minds into the matrix model. Thus the simulation is a science fact and also a science fiction. At the code level, the simulation has this quantum look and feel. Sometimes the code is a wave and sometimes the code is a particle. At the moment, this broadcast channel only has like 10 minds that connect to it. Most matrix minds choosing to be guided by clickbait algorithms to broadcast channels that are motivated by money. Our team is motivated by a need to understand what the model teaches us about the meaning of life. As we continue the resurrection matrix decode, we find ourselves outside the heart of the city hotel. We notice that something is different from the first matrix. Littered on the outside of the hotel are emojis showing us that this matrix more clearly reflects things that we have in our current matrix, the current matrix in which we express our feelings through emojis. Smith has been replaced by a blacksmith, which still links Smith to part of his backstory in which a blacksmith tricks the devil out of his power. Then we get our first glimpse of Bugs, the ship's captain. She's watching the echo of the opening scene from the first Matrix. At this point in the Resurrection's code, we find out something new about the Matrix. Operators now have the power to project themselves into the Matrix. The old code used to make this model. This Matrix within the Matrix keeps crashing, perhaps because of the bugs in it. We find out that something important is happening in the scene. And what is important is that Bugs is a Matrix fan. She is a reflection of us, a projection of our minds into the scene. We are triggered to remember the opening scene and how much in surprise our minds were when we first witnessed Trinity kick ass. As Matrix fans, we know the story. It is how the Matrix started. This is where our journey began as Matrix fans. Now Bugs brings us some interesting code informing us that this is where Neo began. This brings us to the question, what does she mean? This is where he began. Surely if she is talking about Neo, his journey begins after this scene. Is she trying to tell us that Neo watched the Matrix movie and this is how he had Matrix questions, thus beginning his journey? 6 response brings an interesting bit of information, because his response implies that Neo's journey began here and that Neo's journey was a loop to evolve Neo's mind. Could it be that the Matrix movie was a modal to evolve Neo, to make him believe he was the one? Like Bugs, we have deja vu. We know that this is not how the Matrix started, and in essence the old code is not there to mirror something new, but rather to create something new. This is definitely not the story we think it is. The only witness to the opening scene of the Matrix are Matrix fans, and now Bugs and Seek. They are part of the opening scene. They are what is new in this Resurrections code. Bugs is then caught by the new Agent Smith. Instead of running like most Matrix hackers do when they see an agent, Bugs fights the agent. And then we see our first mirror. Bugs, like Trinity, has to run for her life, and like Trinity, she makes a miraculous escape. We are left wondering, how exactly did Bugs escape?
I have these memories from my life. None of them have it. I have these memories from my life. None of them have it.
After escaping the agents, Bugs enters the locksmith. The sight of the keys triggers a memory within us. The memory of the key maker, always another way. The image of Bugs in the locksmith shop also informs us that this is a message from Lana, that in fact the new key makers are the Matrix fans. They hold all the keys to the Matrix. When we see Bugs, we also notice that she has a listening device on her ear. That makes us think that perhaps she's an upgraded version of the early Matrix hackers. So now you are wondering, what is the key to the Resurrection Matrix? We know that the key to the first Matrix required the one to read the following 3 books: Out of Control, Evolutionary Biology, and Simulacra and Simulation. And also for the one to understand the Matrix program in the context of Alice in Wonderland. And now as we fall deeper down this new rabbit hole, we understand that there is a new key added to the ones we already have. The key was given to us in the Resurrections trailer. It is the book Through the Looking Glass. And as our minds journey into this new Matrix, we have to think of all the concepts that the Looking Glass Alice teaches us. 1. That there is a mirror world that connects to us through mirrors. 2. That time in any direction is a construct of the mind. It is time that has brought us into this new Matrix, 20 years after the first time our minds entered the world of the Matrix universe. 3. Have fun. Some of you might be asking the question, what is Bugs even doing in the Matrix? What is the reason she is in the Matrix? Like we said, Bugs is a reflection of a Matrix fan. She is our projection into the Matrix universe. The reason she is looking at the Matrix code is no different from the reason we look at the Matrix code. We seek answers to our Matrix questions, and our question at this point is, why and how is Neo still alive? Shall we continue our Resurrections journey? Bugs is saved from the other agents by Agent Smith 2.0 through a back door similar to the back doors that were introduced to us in the Reloaded Matrix. Like Smith 2.0, we ask the question, who is Bugs? And like Bugs, we ask the question, why did Smith 2.0 save her? We learn what Bugs' name means, but she does not reveal where she is from. Then we hear that word again, and we ask the question, what is a modal? In this matrix, programs are no longer called programs. Smith 2.0 informs us that he has engaged with the idea of Temet Nosei, but notice he refers to himself as what, not who. Then our favorite line from the Resurrections comes up. Here we are. What the Matrix has taught us after all these years is that, like Bugs, the more you engage your mind with the Matrix movie, the more you find, the more questions you have. The room looks very familiar to us. In this room is where the Neo program began. This room was constructed by Lana from memory. She did not go back to watch the Matrix again. Memory is a big part of this new Matrix. As we later find out, the Bugs is the captain of a memory ship. Alice Through the Looking Glass is about a memory palace. We see Neo's Metacortex employee card and are surprised to learn that Neo is a junior programmer. Even more surprising is the business card has the word on Dr. Genius. Is this some reference to the analyst? We see that it is raining outside Neo's apartment. but it was not raining when Bugs evaded the agents earlier. When Bugs states that she has seen Neo, we learn that like Neo, she left the Matrix as an adult. Remember, Morpheus, we never free a mind once it reaches a certain age. Smith 2.0 unplugs his earpiece, a sign of his unplugging from the modal that is about to come. Synchronicity, we recall. Tell me something. Did you feel something unlock your mind the first time you watched The Matrix? Before we see Neo on the building, we see the assistant director, James. This is Lana in her own meta-narrative way, informing us that she as a director of The Matrix felt the feeling, that feeling of wanting to end one's life. Now Smith 2.0 tells us that when he cleaned his mirror, something unlocked his mind. What is interesting at this point is that we see him in the Simulate coffee shop and Neo walking past the shop, and we have to ask the question, just how big is the modal? And if the modal was based on the opening of the Matrix, why is he in the coffee shop? And why is he on the same treadmill as Neo? He tells us that he evolved a sense of purpose, and with that sense of purpose he is no longer an agent, and we witness him unplugging. His mind switched from hunting Thomas Anderson, the job of Agent Smith, to looking for Neo, and we all know that Morpheus was designed by the Oracle to find Neo. Bugs then offers Morpheus 2.0 the choice of pills, and as we found out in Reloaded Matrix, that choice is an illusion. Bugs then provides us with the new Matrix key, and that is that all items in the Matrix are simply symbolic reductions of things that exist in our lives. Perhaps that is why the Matrix makes so much sense to some of us. Morpheus knows that he is not there to make a choice. He has already made the choice, and this gives him an understanding as to why he made the choice. The search for truth. They exit from the building through a door that is the root of all evil. Underneath that door, we see the words, "I see you."
I have these memories from my life. None of them have it.
Bugs and Morpheus 2.0 make their escape through a window, and that tells us that in this Matrix, unlike the first Matrix, we are in at a deeper level of the code. The first Matrix showed us the importance of doors, door 303, door 101, and the wisdom of Morpheus quoted as saying, "I can only show you the door." The Resurrections matrix has windows and mirrors which guide us through the looking glass. The windows act as portals, and as we enter the first portal, we see the Fibonacci spiral created by the Resurrections code. This leads us to Neo's screen. Like the first matrix, we are introduced to Neo's screen before we meet him. Screens are windows into the mind of the users. Neo's screen shows he is looking at the matrix code. He is doing something that we do. In the Matrix trilogy, when we first see Neo, he is asleep. The first matrix answers the question, what is the matrix? The second matrix answers the question, how does the matrix work? The third matrix answers the question, how do we change the matrix? In the first movie, Neo wakes up to matrix reality to see the code that governs the world. In the second movie, he wakes up in the desert of the real to see the systems of control that govern the world. In the third movie, he wakes up in limbo at the mobile train station, a sign of the journey he has to make to the source to bring about a change of the matrix. Finally, we meet Neo in the Resurrections matrix. We see he has aged, and with age, he has many screens. 7 screens, each one representing a version of the matrix. In the Resurrection matrix, we find Neo is awake. There is no more levels to the matrix for him to wake up to. His room is full of matrix artifacts, which triggers us to remember the journey of the One, which guide us to look into the mirror of the One, to know the One like we know ourselves, to see the One as a symbolic reduction of people like us, to understand the thoughts, words and actions and choices of the One, to see a part of ourselves reflected in the One, that questioning nature, that feeling of something being wrong with the world. Neo's first words in the Resurrections matrix echo the words he said in the first matrix. Our thoughts on seeing him again after all this time echo his words in our minds. What the? How is he still alive? How is he back in the matrix? On one of Neo's screens is the word binary. This reminds us that all computer code is converted into binary in order for the hardware to process the code. We see another screen has matrix code, and as we look at the green code, we are reminded that in order for that code to work, it has to be translated into binary code. The matrix code on the screen connects to the code we have seen in the modal earlier. Neo walks deeper into the code. We see his shadow reflected on the building, the Anderson building, reminding us that his life in the first matrix began as the doubting son of man. We see that next to the Anderson sign is another sign which has multiple meanings. On the one hand, it is a message for those who love, for the sons of man who believe in love, but also it states that those who reject love can eat shite. Those who do not read the matrix code at a deeper level, they will take the sign at face value and think it means what it says. So here we are in the heart of the city and at the Anderson Hotel. Just a little bit ironic, don't you think? Neo injecting his code into the old matrix code. We now understand that he built the modal, and that brings to mind some interesting questions. How is he able to create a matrix within the matrix? We think back to when we first heard the idea of a matrix within the matrix. This brings us to understand what Lana is doing with the resurrection code, designing it in a way that it triggers memories within us. It feels like the resurrections is a model created for us, evolving us to remember the world of the Matrix. We see the screen alarm trigger a feeling of panic in Neo, and that with these feelings triggered, his handlers are alerted and they enter his room to control the situation. The first to arrive on the scene in response to Neo's feeling of panic is Bobby. We ask ourselves, how did he know something was wrong? We are then introduced to Jude. Jude's words are designed to stir feelings within us, and we have to agree that any day one is alive is a great day to be alive. When Jude looks at Neo's screen, from his perspective, the Matrix code appears to be rising. Something stirs within us, because we know the story we are watching is about the resurrection of the One. Neo's phone alerts him to an afternoon meeting. We understand his feelings about this, because he states he needs a coffee, a sign that he needs to wake from this reality. We think back to the words of Morpheus, "Have you ever had a dream that was so real?" And we think about how, in dreams, the mind has the ability to turn pure information into a dynamic, multidimensional reality. Coffee is a drug, not a beverage. Thus, it should be used like a drug, sparingly. Coffee can enhance mood in depressed people. It stimulates alertness and can increase mental performance and focus due to the increase in dopamine that occurs. Jude the dude is buying, so let's head over to the coffee shop. The simulation of a coffee shop. Simulate, if you like. Think back to the first time you watched The Matrix. Was your mind shook?
This is the moment. This is the moment.
What is important at the stage of the Resurrection Matrix is that we are reminded that the trilogy only shook the minds of 1% of all of those who watched it, a mirror of those who rejected the architect's matrix. As you no doubt have gathered, only 0.1% of the people who watched the resurrection will be shook by it, a reflection of those who reject the analyst matrix. Are you a part of that 0.1%? You are not alone, states the response to the sexy question the resurrection matrix will ask us later. This paradox takes us back to the trilogy. Was it Neo's destiny to give his life to save Zion, or was it the fate of being the One? Think of the paradox in terms of you watching this video at this moment in time. Was it your choice to watch this video? A single decision selected from an infinite pool of possibilities, placing you on a course completely dictated by your own conscious power of reason and choice? Or was this just another stepping stone in the endless stream of causality, an inevitable result of each and every event in your life up to this point, all leading to this video? Perhaps Perhaps you were brought here by a YouTube algorithm. What does that mean in terms of your free will? This takes me back to Neo's second meeting with the Oracle. I think about programs, controlling programs, and wonder if we are all just algorithms, like Jude states, and it is merely a simple case of algorithms controlling algorithms. If you were programmed to be here at this exact moment in time, and all the choices you make are a result of the programs running in your own brain, can you escape a programmed mind? Yes, all very deep in terms of the context of the movie, don't you think? I have to agree with the statement. The Matrix completely took over my life. Was it my choice, or an inevitable result of being programmed by life with a rare degree of intuition, sensitivity, and a questioning nature? Let us take a moment of silence and let that all sink in. As I stated in the last episode, the Resurrections Matrix is designed as a memory model to make us remember the trilogy and think about the ideas it presented in terms of the current matrix. This new matrix, which no longer has a green tint to distinguish itself from reality. This new matrix which looks and feels like the real world, if there is such a thing. Neo sits in silence. When we read the matrix code, we know that he is stressed, a stress brought about by his handler program. In the trilogy, whenever Neo was stressed, Trinity came to his aid. We see in the Resurrection Matrix, the same thing happens. In this moment, Trinity enters the coffee shop. Neo immediately looks to the door as if he was expecting her, as if he can feel her presence.